Hey everyone, and welcome to the Soul Star Cafe. My name is Ruth Perkinson, and I'm happy all of you are here with me today to talk with my new friend, Kelly Cummings, about her work and the impact it's having in her world and beyond. And so, Kelly, welcome to the Soul Star Cafe. We're so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am really curious about your work. I was introduced to you by a mutual friend, and so we decided to come on and talk for a little while about what you do as a death doula. And that is a new term for me. And so before we kind of get into maybe your history, can you just sort of explain to our audience what a death doula is and what conscious dying is so we can get sort of a
Okay,
grounded answer to that. Yeah.
sure. Let's start with conscious dying and what that means, because that informs the explanation of what a doula does. So, conscious dying is really just approaching the end with intention and extreme consciousness, not just letting it happen like we do most of the things in our lives. We just kind of it's just there, and we don't think about it, we don't prepare for it, we don't have intention around it. So conscious dying is intentionally approaching our end of life so that it involves consciously living, being in the moment, being aware, um, living in the present, and knowing that we are here for we're not here indefinitely. We're here temporarily, and knowing that and living with that in mind is what conscious living and conscious dying is about. So, knowing that a doula is someone who helps you on that journey, helps to um, understand where you are now and where you'd like to be at the end and beyond, and helps you plan accordingly. They're there as a guide, they're there as an advocate, they're there to help you make that transition. And a doula is a Greek word, an old word that just means women who serve. And there are other kinds of doulas. There are birth doulas. So the birth doula helps the mother and advocates for the mother, and at a soul to soul level, makes a connection so that they are of service at the beginning of a life. The death doula is a soul to soul connection, with the intention of making that the experience that the dying person wants it to be.
That's a beautiful way to describe it. And what I'm kind of flashing on right now is the idea of, in our world, in our Western world especially, we often think of the word hospice.
Mhm.
And how is that a different, like being a death doula and that conscious dying, how is that similar or different from the idea of hospice?
So, as a nurse, I am quite familiar with the institution of hospice. Hospice has been around for decades
Yeah.
and decades, and it's a medical institution
Okay.
with wonderful theory and foundational precepts. It's wonderful. It's to ease suffering and to help people at the end of life experience as little discomfort as possible. But it really is a medical event,
Right.
and handled by a medical team. Doula would fit nicely into that, but supplementally, that doula would be aside from the medical team and advocating for the dying person, and assuring that their wishes and their hopes and their expectations are addressed.
Okay.
So it's not they're not in conflict with one another, but the doula work is very much a spiritual, an emotional, a relational, a human event, and not a medical event.
I'm really glad we made
Nothing,
that.
nothing wrong with hospice. I love hospice.
Yeah.
Hospice is wonderful, and the sooner you can be referred to hospice, the better.
Yeah.
There, but it's different.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we made that distinction because I think probably that's a question you might get a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
How do
So
you work?
let me ask you a little bit about your own personal journey with this kind of work, because I love this idea that it's soul to soul, it's spiritual. Can you give us a little bit about you and your journey to the Conscious Dying Institute? And I know it's been quite the journey, 40 years, right?
Well, it's been a lifetime, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I've always been curious about death. I've always been interested in it. I love the idea of a funeral ritual. I love the culture around different funeral rituals, and I've always been curious about that. Believe it or not, as a nurse, I have never been with a patient who died.
Oh,
Never
wow. That's
in
interesting.
40 years. That doesn't mean I didn't take care of patients who died, but I was never physically present for a patient's dying in 40 years, which is I don't know what to make of it. So my work with the dying has been outside of the hospital
Right.
experience.
Right. Gotcha.
That being said, I've always been very curious and very passionate about the care of older folks and how they find themselves in the hospital often and what that experience is like for them. And I've been working to improve care for older folks for a long time. And part of that is where do you die? How do you die? How do you talk about dying? So I've opened palliative care units and I've worked with hospice and palliative care teams, and it's very relevant in this work. But in 2013, I was looking for something different and just happened upon the Conscious Dying Institute and went to the Sacred Passage Doula training in 2013, and it changed my life. It wasn't that I went there to learn how to be a doula. I was curious. I was like, I'm not ever going to be a doula. I just want to know this work.
Right.
But it changed everything for me. I came from a pretty standard spiritual background. I was raised Methodist. Everybody I knew was either Jewish, Catholic, or Protestant. I didn't know about any other spiritual world.
Right, right.
And when
Yeah.
I went to conscious dying, I was exposed. The world opened up to me because I learned as when you first start learning about your own beliefs around death and dying, you start taking in so much. There's so much in there.
Right.
And I learned about different spiritual practices. It changed everything for me.
Yeah, it sounds like a very pivotal moment,
It
2013 for
was.
you.
It
Yeah.
was. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was. And we learned about forgiveness. We learned about Ho'oponopono. We learned about being with difficult emotions in a different way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
profound. So since then,
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
just it just resonated with me so much, I started teaching death doulas. I started practicing as faculty for the Conscious Dying Institute as a Sacred Passage doula trainer.
Wow.
And I've
Yeah.
been doing that since then.
13
When
years. Yeah.
COVID, yeah, when COVID came around, everything changed, right?
Yeah.
Everything went virtual, and I didn't really like the virtual work as much as I liked the in-person work. So I taught some online courses,
Right.
but other things came up, and then I reconnected with the founder a few years ago, and we started talking about me taking the role of the director on and owning Conscious Dying Institute. And when I retired last year, I said, "Yeah, I think I want to do this. I want to." So I took over the company in February of this year. So it's only been a few months,
Yeah.
and I would tell you, in since February when I launched the new Conscious Dying Institute, I my expectations have been exceeded. The people that I've gotten to talk to, the people that I've connected with, you and others like you, has made it.
Yeah.
such a joy
Truly,
to
truly, I hear you there. And because I think we need to all begin to have, at least for me personally, we never talked about death growing up. It was like it was just, it was there, it happened, and then we just moved on. We never held sacred space around it. We never talked about it, it felt like. For me, I had a couple of really brutal events growing up where I lost a friend suddenly. And so, can you give us a little bit of what some languaging around the all of it is for people, like part of what we want to do on this conversation is help people begin to have that, how do we begin to have that conversation with ourselves and with our friends and family, even at a younger age, up until we're moving through our older years. Maybe some tips there would be helpful.
Yeah, and for me, it's always been pretty matter of fact. So I'm not going to talk about my experience because I'm not I don't shy away from it. I never have.
Yeah.
But I know you're absolutely right. In our culture, we're very death phobic. We're very death averse, and and we do not feel comfortable having these conversations.
Mhm.
There are so many ways to approach this.
Right.
And there are tools that you can use. There's a something I actually brought to a recent event where I was hosting a table. It's called a death. They're called death cards, and they're just cards that are conversation starters with questions about, how comfortable are you talking to somebody else? Never, I run away, I love it. It's like a multiple choice thing, but there are prompts for you to begin that conversation. So that's an interesting way to do it. Um, Knowing your own values and beliefs and how you came to those values and beliefs is important. If we had never had the conversation with anyone around our own death, we probably haven't had it with ourselves. So first things first is to have that conversation with yourself and to, what do I want? What do I think is going to happen? Where do I think this leads to? And where do those ideas come from? And really a deep look into what are your because when we oftentimes when we're younger we start think about that we panic. So when you're spiritually developed as an older adult you can have those conversations with yourself and not feel like you have to run away from it. Some people do still have to run
Right.
away from it,
Yeah.
but the first step is really to take that inventory of self and your own beliefs and thoughts and kind of your ancestral beliefs and thoughts because you don't come to those things on your own. They come from other places. So
Right.
to
That's a
think about
great,
that.
I really love that idea of taking your own personal inventory of how you feel, what you've been thinking about, rather than sort of keep it at bay in a sense. You're really bringing that idea of death. And I oftentimes think of death as a transformation, like we're going from this place
Mhm.
into another place, whatever that looks like for the being. And what does your own personal transformation look like? And to start having that awareness, right? I think that's what we're really doing is talking, having an awareness.
Yeah. Yeah. Being conscious about.
Being conscious and aware, right? That
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. This is really beautiful. To start there, to have a conversation with yourself. And can you give us any wisdom around that? Or as you approach somebody who's interested in the death doula work, what are some of the things that you talk about or make an invitation to for people who are curious about, hiring? I guess you guys go through it.
Mhm.
Maybe there's like you get hired to do the death doula work, right? With
Sure.
people. Is that?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So a couple of things. How do you get how would you start a conversation? Sorry about that. So, how do you start a conversation with yourself? What steps would you take? There are lots of things out there that you can do, but one of the nicest things that I have seen is a tool called the Five Wishes.
Oh, okay.
And I can send you all these links,
Yeah,
Ruth. The
please
five
do.
wishes, not witches, the five wishes.
We can call it the five
We could
witches.
call it that, but it's an online
Five warlocks and the five witches.
five people. It's an online document that covers obviously five different categories, and I can't name them right now, but it's a lovely tool to do this self-inventory
Gotcha.
because it addresses spiritual, it addresses relationships, it
Mhm.
addresses the mundane things like your passwords and your, you
Yeah.
know, things, what have you done for your but it's a document that you would fill out and update online periodically as your wishes change, but it's something that you could share with your loved ones so that they know these are the things that are really important to Ruth, and I want to make sure that I do that. So that's a good place for a person to start.
That's a
Another place
great
is,
idea. I love that. Yeah.
yeah, another idea is to hire a doula. So how do
Right,
you do
right.
that? And what
Yeah.
would a doula do for you? A doula, there's a wide range of activities for a doula. A doula can do education. A doula could, hold classes around, hold conversations, hold classes. A doula can be an educator. A doula can be a coach. A doula can be that person that is sitting vigil with you at the end. And a doula can do all these things. So a doula, for somebody that's just, I want to start thinking about this, I'm interested in it, I don't know where to start, has a tool. Most of them have tools that they can use for planning. Like the one we use at the Conscious Dying Institute is called the best 3 months. And
The what? The last 3 months?
the best three
Oh, the
months,
best 3 months.
the
Okay. All
best
right.
3 months.
I'm
So
jotting this down.
it's a it's a tool that asks you if you had 3 months left to live,
Right.
what would be most important to you emotionally, spiritually, physically, relationally,
Yeah.
and then what would you like the after care to be like after
Yeah.
you die? So it's a tool to say what would be your in your imagined life, your best 3 months, what would that look like? And you get that hashed out, and then the doula will say something like, so what will it take for you to do that now?
Right.
Why are you waiting to live your best 3 months? Let's start doing that now.
Yeah.
Let's start planning for that
It
now.
almost sounds like it's a way to really live your life, you
It
know?
is. It is.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I
So like
love
so
that.
let's for example, Ruth, let's say I ask you're my client and I say, who would you like to be with you at the end? Who
Oh,
would
that's
be
a great.
important, who would be most important for you to be with
Yeah.
you in those last few months? And you
Okay.
say, well, I'd like it to be my aunt. My favorite aunt would be the one I'd want with me. And I say, well, so what would have to happen for you to have your aunt there with you? And you would say, well, she and I haven't talked in years, but I think about her all the time.
Right.
So then the doula would say, well, let's put a plan in place. If that's really where you'd like to be, let's put a plan in place for you to reconnect with your aunt. So that's the process of working with a doula for beginning that. How do I start planning for my own death?
Yeah. That's a great idea because it also brings in this idea of healing, healing your relationships,
Yeah.
healing, setting intentions, and watching them sort of manifest with a death doula as your beautiful guide, bringing all those things to that sacred transition point,
Yes.
where you're at that choice point, that end point of making the transition from this world to the next. And while we're there, I was going to ask you, so you've obviously with your death doula work, I would imagine now you didn't see it as a nurse, but you've witnessed it now. Um, as a death doula, is there something there that's been kind of interesting for you as you've witnessed people making that transition? Is there something you can speak to us here about that? Just anything interesting or curious? Yeah.
It's as a doula, which is kind of an outside observer to that person and that family and chosen
Right.
family, whatever who happens to be there in that time, is how uninformed so many people are about what the end is like.
Oh my gosh, that's really helpful to hear. I
And
love that.
because we don't think about it,
Right.
you don't read a book like what happens at the end. I
Right.
do. I do. I
Right.
read a
Right.
lot about it. But you're not picking up one of my favorite books is uh, um, a handbook for future corpses and those who love them. And it's a lovely book that just kind of it gives you an idea of what that experience is like through different stories.
Oh
But
yeah.
people are so fearful because they just don't have an understanding of what the end is going to be like. We just
Right.
don't know until we've experienced it. And that's
Right.
sad because you're so worried that you're so fearful of the unknown that you don't
Right.
experience it in the moment. Like this kind of an analogy or metaphor, whatever. When I got married as a young person, I was so caught up in the details and the every little thing that has to happen when you get married and have a wedding ceremony and a wedding reception that you don't think about what's actually happening to you.
Yeah.
You don't think about like what am I getting myself into right now?
Right.
How
Right. Yeah.
and
I'm
it's
having this rite of passage, right? It's sort
right, right. And so it's really sad. There are no do-overs. There are do-overs for weddings, but there aren't do-overs for something as sacred as the end of life.
right.
So it's sad to me that people are so fearful that they can't be in that experience with
Yeah.
their heart.
Yes.
Their brain is working more than their heart is because they're just afraid.
Well, this is fascinating. Can you come back to this channel and talk more about your work? I'm just
I'd
feeling like
love
we're going to
to.
sort
This
of
is
tie up.
so much fun.
Well, yeah, this is fun. So let's okay, so Conscious Dying Institute is how people can find you.
Yep.
And we'll put all of that in the description box for everyone who's watching this video. But we are running out of time a little bit. I can kind of feel that.
Yeah.
What would be something here at the close of our conversation, just for today? We've just touched on some really cool things. What would be something you would want to leave people with as they're looking at their own transformation, their own death, or maybe they're working with somebody else that's in that place? What's like a really good key thing to know?
I think the key thing is that being present in your life and knowing that we don't know when the end will come is a real significant, it's a Buddhist principle. It's something that, many people are aware of in different cultures, but in the United States, we don't think about it that much. But,
Right,
understanding, living in the present and knowing that we don't know when our end will come. It could be tomorrow, it could
right,
be any moment.
right,
Begin thinking, what would you want that to be like? And plan for it before, you get to that point and it's too late.
right. I gotcha. Because we want to, my sense of it is we want to be aware and present of the sacred transition without fear.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my
A
gosh. And
lot
I
of
think,
suffering, a lot of suffering comes from fear.
right,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
so I think a death doula, to me, it feels like you guys are really helping that person go from this world to the next with that sacred, without fear, with love and with awareness and with
Yes.
presence.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm gonna just right now say I would love for you to be my death doula. And
Yeah.
I think that's a little further out, but I would, yeah, we'll just have more of these
Okay.
conversations.
All right. That'd be
Kelly,
wonderful.
Kelly Cummings, you're an amazing spirit. Thank you for your journey to this work. And I'm getting a chill actually. It really feels like you've helped not only your own personal wheelhouse in a sense, but so many other people. And you've really been an educator.
Hmm.
And as an educator, former educator, I really appreciate people who dive in and really figure things out and then teach it to the world. And so thank you so much for this part of your journey.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
Yeah. Okay. So thank you again, guys. This is Kelly Cummings. We love her, and it looks like you have your Conscious Dying
I
Institute
do.
logo.
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Okay. I love it. All right. So we're gonna say bye for now, and I'm gonna let you you have the last word as I try to find this stop button here.
Have a last word. I check us out.
Got it. All right. Love you, girl. Well.